In this video, I'm going to explain to you why Rolex is falling from their royal throne into the abyss of irrelevance. Rolex is dead, or soon will be. Now that I got your attention, Rolex is sadly still the king, and they probably will be for the near future. However, I think their lack of innovation and mediocrity is gonna put them into a position where they're going to lose the top spot and the high crown that only their branding has given them. Right now, I truly think that Rolex has been pushed into the dark corners, into the back alleys of the uninformed new watch buyers who have been talked into buying their overpriced garbage. Now, Rolex is not high horology. You could argue that maybe the Skydweller or the Yachtmaster 2 could be high horology with their complications, but anything below that is anything but high horology. If people argue that Hublot is a garbage brand, I'm going to argue that Rolex is a garbage brand. You're going to argue that Hublot uses of movements, and I'm going to argue that the movements, the in-house movements by Rolex, yes, are workhorse movements. So is an NH35, so is an ETA 2824. There's all these words I could use like workhorse. However, only recently have they changed their caliber, and before that, it had been in the same watch for over 20 years with little to no modifications. And now we're talking about undecorated movements in something like a Submariner dive watch. Now, speaking of the Submariner dive watch, this is going to be the most iconic watch in Rolex's catalog. I can't argue that. I do own a Submariner myself, and I can't argue that it does have a place in the market. However, the Rolex Submariner was originally designed in 1953, released in 1954 to be the cheaper alternative to the 50 Fathoms, which was the dive watch at the time. So no matter what anybody says about Rolex being the first dive watch, it really wasn't. The 50 Fathoms was the iconic dive watch, and Rolex came in as the cheaper alternative. Now, because of their branding, they have been able to rise to the top of being the most well-known brand. But this is where I think a lot of people misconstrue or misunderstand what a high horology watch is compared to just a great branded watch. You can argue that Movement Watch is a piece of garbage, and it absolutely is, but their branding made it so it's on the wrist of millions of people. I'm going to argue that Rolex is very similar. Now, Rolex is not Movement. Rolex, of course, uses better materials in some of their watches like the Yachtmaster or their Platinum Daytona or their solid gold watches. Yes, they do use precious materials, but when you look at the overall build quality of the watches, they're not that great. And I'll give you an example. The GMT Master had a massive, now we're talking just a couple years ago, we're not talking 20 or 30 years ago, just a couple years ago, had a problem with painting the GMT hands correctly. Under a ×10 loop, these things were garbage looking. And if you're buying a watch that's $15,000, I want everything on it to be perfect. Now, they've also had issues in the past with quality control. Now, you think, Chase, quality control, why would someone selling a watch for $8,500 at the authorized dealer, why would that have any quality control issues? You would think that it would go through stage after stage and person after person, and they'd look and they'd find these imperfections, but that's just not the case. They're a business like any other business, and their business is selling watches. Now, because of that, there have been some quality control issues. I'm not saying Rolex is Seiko with their misaligned bezels or any quality control issues like that, but there have been plenty of incidences, forum after forum, of issues with the movement, issues with the case being sealed correctly and having water intrusion, even issues with dust on the dial, which to me, if I'm buying a watch that's $8,500 at the authorized dealer or over $10,000 on the gray market, on the secondary market, I want it to be absolutely perfect, and it should be perfect. And you could say, well, Chase, that's not every watch coming out of their manufacturer. It shouldn't be any watch coming out of their factory at all. Every single watch, especially a watch that is going to be over $5,000, should be absolutely perfect and meticulously checked. And you say, it is absolutely perfect and meticulously checked. But then why are the GMT hands on the GMT Master all jacked up? Why are there issues with these other things at a bunch of forums? It doesn't take very long to do some research to find out that a lot of people have issues with their Rolex. A lot of people find that there's dust in the dial. A couple people have found like a small hair in their dial, right? This is absolutely unacceptable, especially for watches like this. Now, the reason I will never get rid of my Kermit is because I purchased this 50th anniversary Kermit at an authorized dealer 13 years ago at this point. And back then, even just 13 years ago at an authorized dealer, things were not the same as they are now. I could go in and they had some models, or I would have to be put on a wait list. Now, this wait list would last maybe a month and a half, maybe 2 months before you'd get a call, and they'd tell you to come in and buy your watch if you want at retail. All that being said, now you are being strong-armed like mobsters from a B-rated movie.
What are you here for?
I want to talk details.
Yeah. I hear you got some trouble, huh?
With these authorized dealers that force you to spend thousands of dollars on other goods before they even allow you to be placed on a list to maybe be called in a couple years to perhaps and potentially buy this mediocre dive watch. To me, that's just garbage. It's completely unacceptable. Now, we're talking about watches that offer basic 300 meters of water resistance. Yes, it is cost certified. So is a lot of watches over $1,000 cost certified. So you could say, well, it's a precision timepiece and Rolex has a higher standard. They really don't have a higher standard. Their lackluster design and lack of innovation just shows the fact that they have no courage moving forward in the future when it comes to design. Yes, everybody knows the iconic Rolex case. Nobody argues that. And from 100 feet away, you're going to see a dive watch and you may say, oh, that could be a Rolex, especially if you see something like the Cyclops Eye that is indicative of something like a Submariner. So you'd look and you'd say, God, he may be wearing a Rolex. And you're right. They have created this awesome brand and design, but they rarely have ventured from their iconic design. In 60 years, with only minor changes from the case shape or the lug width, so they're slightly longer or slightly shorter, right? Just these simple modifications just show that Rolex's lack of innovation, again, continues to the same word, mediocrity, because that's exactly what it is. They refuse to innovate. Their watches are mediocre. Their movements are okay. Now, I'm not talking about the high horology complications of like the Sky Dweller. I'm talking about, generally speaking, when it comes to, I'll even argue the Daytona, which used to have a zenith movement in it and now finally has their own. I can argue over and over again that these watches are not high horology, that I could find you a watch at under $1,000 that hits every single spec, has better quality control, and just because it doesn't have the crown, now you're going to pay an extra $7,000. Now, the reason I made this video is because I have people constantly who are just getting into the watch market who think they should buy a Rolex, and I keep telling them that Rolex is not the king of the river. They're not the biggest shark in the ocean, and the quality of their watches aren't up to snuff when you look at other watch designs out there. If you're going to spend $10,000, you have so many other watch brands you can choose from, and you can buy multiple watches that have higher horology than Rolex and better build quality, decorated movements, even better water resistance, better case finishing, better quality control. And I think that Rolex soon are going to end up finding themselves in a place where the watch market and the watch collector are going to stop purchasing their garbage. Now, all this is done in jest. I don't like Rolex at all. I think that they are putting themselves in a back corner by refusing to really innovate on their designs. I think people are really getting tired of the overall watch market when it comes to Rolex, their terrible pricing, their lack of pushing out more product, and their intentionally holding of product to increase the prices in the market. I know this is all business, but I know a lot of people are getting tired of it. And every time someone asks me what kind of watch should they buy, I would rather them buy a used a Lange Azun, right, as a dress watch than spend twice as much on something like a Submariner or a Datejust. I mean, Datejust aren't twice as much, right? But I wouldn't ever pay a premium on a Datejust, right? But people are, simply because it has a Rolex brand. Now, what do you guys think about this video? Again, this is just done in jest. This is my own personal opinion from someone who has gone through the Rolex purchasing twice. And honestly, when I look at the overall watch market, I won't ever buy another one. If I had $100 million in the bank, there's so many other watches that I'd rather buy. And I don't understand why people continue to go back to Rolex, because if you're really entrenched in the watch collecting world, you know that they are mediocre and mid-tier at best. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment on the content you guys want to see on this channel. I'm trying to release a video every single day for the next week or 2 weeks. I want to see if I can really get that algorithm and push some more videos to you guys. 15,000 subscribers. I have that PRX giveaway that is in the mail right now. It'll be here, I think, tomorrow or the next day. That'll be a review in about a month, and then I will give that giveaway to one of my subscribers at 15,000. So make sure you hit that notification bell and come back and see all the videos, and I'll see you in the next one.